I think we get afraid and tired. We get tired, watching people do the wobble with police officers. While those moments seem heartwarming, at the same time, I think it undermines and allows for folks to relax, to think that we have arrived at a place of this is not going to happen in a weekend. It's not going to happen in a week. This might not happen in several years, right? But we have to keep our foot on the gas and not relax and not give people an out. And I think that that's the other thing we do. We're quick to give, like Amber Geiger, the police officer that killed Botham Jean, she got a hug from the judge. Botham Jean's body wasn't cold in the grave, and the judge comes down off of her bench and hugs her.
I think human beings want to feel like there's hope in humanity. I do. I actually thought the judge in that case, the brother, wanted to forgive her. You are looking at a person. I am not a forgiving person. I am just a mean.
Because you're a Virgo. It's your Virgo, Soledad.
Right.
That's
so
part
you know
of
what that means. I'm a mean, spiteful. I will literally come back to haunt people from my grave just because I'm mean and spiteful. So I'm not that person. But I think there's a lot of people who feel like part of their healing is to feel like I want to like the police. I want to believe that not all officers are. I want to believe these things. And so they search for that good. I used to have people say that all the time, why can't you guys do good news on the news? I'm like, because I want to do realistic news. And I understand they want to sit in the chair and feel like, oh, someone raised money for that orphanage and this person over here. I get it. I mean, I do get it. I think part of the challenge is in making sure that someone doing the wobble or police officers kneeling the visual and the symbolism you're seeing doesn't dismantle this idea. But what is the real change that was made? And we've all been there, right? The boss you have who's, in the photo with all the young Black students who are the interns for the summer. It's like, that's amazing. What's your team? What's your executive team look like? That's what I want to know, both of those things. And I'm glad that he's in the photo with the young people. I think that they probably loved it and that was important. And I'm glad that he's doing it. But what's your executive team look like too, right? Those two questions have to be asked. I'm glad that there are people dancing in the street. I think that's how some people don't want to be in a scary protest. They want to be in a protest where they're like, I'm out here, my voice is heard. But then also, what's happening in your community, numbers-wise? You got to have both.
Yes. And let's talk about race. I'm glad you went to the gamut of there are people that don't have friends that aren't racist. There are people that are married to Black people that are racist, because that is absolutely true. And it's not black and white, this racism thing, because it's a structure. It's a system. And as a woman who is raising children who may or may not be perceived as Black by the world, right? As a woman who has, your mother was an amazing, I love seeing your tributes to her. Just beautiful, beautiful Black woman who's Cuban, right? Who was Cuban. But your dad was white. Like, how have you navigated this race thing, and how do you see it moving forward? Because I think this generation, these 20, 18, 19-year-olds, they don't care about race the way their fathers do.
Yeah, they will, because it'll come and smack them upside the head. I mean, they don't, which is great, because I think it's nice to be a little bit naive about things sometimes. Again, I'm a data person. I don't want to hear that you love all people. I want to see what your team looks like. I don't want you to tell me about diversity because everyone has different experiences. I'm like, when we do our show, matter of fact, we literally count how many women. If we're doing Native Americans, do we have Native Americans on? If we're talking about poor people, do we have poor people on? If we're talking about millennial voters, were there people who were voters who were millennials on? And so we started tracking it, because guess what? All of us, me included, if I'm thinking economists, I like to see that I over-index in the old 68-year-old white dude from Stanford, right? Like, I just think I've seen it on TV so much that I think it gives me comfort, right? I think that's a guy he looks like an economist. And so you have to hold yourself accountable and say, no, we have plenty of that guy on. Who's our economist? And by the way, there's a million women of color who are economists, a zillion. And so it's just a matter of not falling to your default, right? Like, oh, I always like such and such. No. You and if you measure it, if you really do care and you say you care, then measure it. And you'll find yourself. I over-index on New York people. We shoot our show in D.C. I love a person I could throw on a train who comes in. Well, guess what? If we're really purporting to cover the whole country, then we need some folks in the Midwest that we actually pay the money and fly them in or do them remotely. And the only way to know if you're failing on that is to track it and count it. That's it. I don't need to talk to a politician about farmers. I need to talk to a farmer about farmers. And he doesn't have to agree with me. He just needs to be available and answer honestly. So you have to force yourself. But I would have thought like, oh, I'd be super diverse. And we actually found, again, we all went back to our, here's who I like, here's who I'm comfortable with. So, I have always found like you just have to have conversations about race. Some people would say to me, oh, so what do you just like walk in and start counting people? I'm like, yes, I do. I literally, if I'm speaking at an event, I'll be like, I did. I walked in and I literally counted. How many black people did you have at this event? Like,
wow.
Yeah. Wow. And I think it makes them realize like it's okay. And it's okay to count people, right? If you tell me that you're doing a thing that is representative, then be counted. Why would you be worried about being counted? And I always laugh. It's a line that gets a great laugh from the audience because they know often they're here serving a community, but they're really not. They're serving certain people. And it's not anybody's, sometimes, it's not anybody's being evil. It's just they're comfortable with a certain thing. They have ins with a certain thing. And you look up one day, you're like, oh, everyone looks like me. I love people like me. Me is good. You have to push to say, here's what we're aiming for, and this is what we need to get. And you have to then, for me, charts, data, tracking. So when it comes to race, I think it's exactly the same thing. It's making sure that the conversations aren't just feel good, that there's data points undergirding the conversations that you're having. And again, we for this millennial voter segment, we were doing millennial voters, and all of a sudden we all looked at each other in a meeting. We're like, oh my gosh, we have this dude who's like 50 is going to be commenting on millennial voters. Like, you know what? And we had a great young woman join him who was a millennial voter. And, of course, she was the one answering the question, why the heck do you guys not vote? And she was great. She was like, well, no one really speaks to me. Why would I vote? I mean, she was brilliant. But I could have very easily done this guy who runs an organization that's very credible, and he's super thoughtful, and he's very smart, and he deserves to be in the conversation. But so does a millennial voter if that's what the topic is.
Right. Matteroffact.tv, matteroffact.tv. You can check out all of the packages there. Before I let you go, Soledad O'Brien, as we try to put this all back together, your thoughts on this? Is the permanence of it? Is this going to last?
I actually feel good about it.
You do?
You know why? And I'm as you know, I'm not a Pollyanna-ish person, and I'm not a super optimistic person, but I actually think corporations, some of them are completely full of it, but a number are actually trying to figure it out, and they recognize they have an employee base that's based in America, and America is very unhappy and unstable right now, and it's not good for business. And so the number of corporations who I think genuinely, and some are making missteps. I'm not sure I need to hear from Tony the Tiger, hashtag Black Lives Matter, but I think a lot of people are trying to figure it out. Many people are revealing themselves, but I think a lot of people are like, our employees are struggling. How do we help them? And by the way, we're a bunch of middle-aged white guys. We don't even, do we talk? Do we not talk? What if we say something wrong? What if I say something and I'm a racist? I come across as, isn't that terrible? And really sort of saying, you just have to start having these conversations. And I said, I was telling this organization about covering a story in Thailand, covering the tsunami. And I said, one of the things I did, because I have little kids, I would touch kids on the head, like I pat them on the head, because they're exactly like up to your elbow. So they're kind of, so I'd be talking and I'd kind of rest my hand on someone's head, which here in America is considered to be a very nice, sort of like charming thing to do. And the guy said to me, I need you to stop touching these kids on the head. It is the most offensive thing you can do in this culture. I had no idea. And I said to him, I am so grateful that you stopped me. I really appreciate you because I'm not trying to be offensive. And I'm so embarrassed and I'm horrified. But thank you. Thank you. And I think we have to kind of figure out how to get people to have these conversations of it's embarrassing, it's awkward. I told them another story. I was giving someone an award the other day, and the guy who was handing off to me said to me before we went, he said, we're going to be at the podium together. I'm a hugger. Are you cool with being hugged or not? I was like, that's so great. Yes, I'm a hugger too. But I love that he like took seconds to find out,
Right.
you know, like we're in a time now where not everybody wants to be hugged. And by the way, we don't know each other. So,
right.
but I'm like, I'm happy, you know, and it's not that hard, right? He didn't spend 15 hours trying to figure it out. He literally took 10 seconds before we went up there. What makes you comfortable? And I think a lot of these complicated conversations have to be, I feel like I don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm going to ask you guys to jump in and help me. How would that change the conversation dramatically? I think it would.
Well, I want you to promise to come back and let's continue to have
A
these
deal.
conversations. Soledad
Thanks for having
O'Brien,
me.
thank you for being here.